Hello everyone, um, I'm Admiral AA and this is going to be my first commentary video on this channel. So what I'm just going to be doing in this video is giving you guys an overview of Project Overlord and the current developments. So in the last video on Project Overlord, we examined a small type or a medium-sized capital ship, which we call the Overlord Heavy. And now, ever since that video, we have tweaked the technology and given some variety to it. So, well, this is our original Overlord ship or Overlord class destroyer or class ship. And what we did was added some more. Actually, this was the original here. Um, this is the medium class now. This used to be the H class, the heavy class, because we have these different classes of Overlord ships. And the entire project is just me exploring and playing around with the black box technology. So black box weapons and black box engines. Um, Project Overlord is just me sort of playing around with them or exploring them. So this is Overlord M. And this used to be what we called Overlord H. We maintained Overlord L here. It's the same thing as the one shown in the video. But M here, to reduce its size and to make it less overkill, we reduced the amount of um, guns here or turrets here. And my birds are screeching, if you guys will excuse that. So okay, so let's start off first with the Overlord SC. So actually, I think we should begin with what the engines are, the propulsion modules here. So we have different kinds of propulsion modules, and this is the main focus, or actually the main thing with the program, is that hyper efficient, low power consumption engines. So first, and because I was experimenting a lot, I had to come up with various different types of black box engine modules. So we start off with the methane FE. It doesn't really have a model. No black box engine that has a model or render for that. Maybe they'll fix that in a future update of Children of the Earth. So we have an exhaust velocity of 28.0 kilometers per second, and our thrust is 500 kilonewtons, and our thrust to mass ratio is 510 kilograms. Where g is just the gravitational constant of the Earth, 9.8 meters per second squared. So our gimbal speed is 9.55 rates per minute, and our gimbal angle is 15 degrees. Now the reason why I set the gimbal angle to only be 15 degrees is if we do a full 360 or 180 degree turret on the engine or gimbal on the engine tends to overcorrect, and so the ship ends up tumbling around and it's not really a good sight. And of course that uses methane. Now FE stands for force engine. That's just our moniker for this engine, or what we call it. And so next one is our nitromethane force engine. This uses methane and nitrogen, I believe. And its exhaust velocity is 360 kms, kilometers per second, and our thrust is 92 kilonewtons of thrust, and our thrust to mass ratio is 93.8 gravities or kilograms. Now our gimbal speed is 9.55 RPM, and our gimbal angle is 41 degrees. Now for the nitromethane FE, I didn't really change the gimbal angle just yet, because unlike the other ones here, I stopped using this nitromethane FE because I decided to just sort of use different types here, such as the super heavy methane FE and the heavy methane FE. Now this super heavy methane and heavy methane are for much more heavier ships like the H series or the H class of our Overlord ships, and then hydrogen deuteride FE, and this same thing. Our gimbal angles are all 15. The reason why I haven't changed the gimbal angle for the nitromethane FE is because I stopped using it. It's sort of deprecated at this point. And we have of course our methane FE. Now, there's some other things here that I designed, such as a Raptor engine, which operates on methane, of course, and it's a methalox like the real Raptor, and then this 5 kilometers per second fluorine hydrogen gimbal combustion rocket, which is used on the four sloop ships that I designed for the previous mission or the latest mission, which was to destroy a rising insurgency at Make. Okay. So now let's look at the Overlord SC. So as you can see, we have a ton of aluminum layers here, all spaced all with a spacing of 25 centimeters, and of each, of course, each of their own thickness of 1 centimeter. Now we have two diamonds on the front, and this actually proved to be pretty effective. But it's kind of shielding is kind of redundant because the EAT-led turrets or the EAT-led weapons here are fast enough to actually destroy the enemy ships before they can even fire at us. So that's the overkill part here. We can outfire the enemy. So before we actually go into the ship designs, let's take a look at what weapons we actually designed for these rockets or these ships. So the first venture or the first prototype we had of a black box engine was the EAT-led one gun. Now the reason why it's EAT-led is because the projectiles are made of lead, which are it's kind of an ideal thing. It's kind of inefficient, but we just went with it because it sounds a bit funny and meme-ish. And we had different tracer materials for these guys. I believe the sniper has a copper tracer, if I remember. No, it's nickel. Um, but some of these have bright yellow, bright orange, red, blue colors. We plan on doing some. We at the Consolidation Engineering Corps is planning on a different sort of a new configuration, a new EAT-led sniper or series of snipers that is dedicated to Pride Month, wherein we make them fire successive shots that gives that traces out a rainbow. So that's pretty cool. So okay, oh if we go back here to our EAT-led series, we'll notice that our muzzle velocity is 500 kms. Now, okay, now when it comes to firing these guys, if you guys set the spread over here to a high, um, to an angle greater than 0.10 degrees, a gun with this much muzzle velocity will start spraying all over the place, and once it sprays all over the place, it doesn't really hit any targets. It's like think of it like the uh, think of it like the Force engine series, wherein if we fire it and then we have a too big of a gimbal angle, it overcorrects. This time, the muzzle velocity bangs the gun around if we let the spread be too much. So we just set it to 0.10 so that it can focus its fire, and so we have 180-gram rounds. It doesn't really the mass because of Newton's second law, F equals ma. The mass of each round doesn't really matter when it's traveling at a very insane velocity, and the velocity of 500 kilometers per second. And at first, when I first explored this, like there was an option to add, um, there was an option to add ammo base and stacks of these guys. And when I picked like 4 stacks of these 100,000 rounds, I was wondering why the heck my ship was so heavy. And so I realized, oh yeah, it's because of the stacks there. Since they have multiple stacks, we have multiple rounds or amount of them. It's like a multiplier of some sorts of how many rounds we have. So that's that. So the turning speed is 5.17 degrees per second, and our max turn angle is 91 degrees. Now, the reason why we are able to this time we're able to make the turn angle, a full 90 degrees or 180 degrees, is because um, really the knockback from the muzzle velocity of these black box guns don't really have any meaningful effect on the ship or the gun itself when it's firing. Unlike the spread here, because our gun is so precise and so rapid, it's able to keep spreading around, right? It randomizes its movements. So unlike that, here it doesn't really affect it. We really have no force or knockback from firing that big of a velocity. Now, I know it violates Newton's first law, wherein we have an opposite reaction. But these are black box modules. They're really theoretical things. I know this breaks away from the realism of the game, but we must note that, of course, this is just a work in progress of a project, and it's just us exploring. Of course, there's nothing else to that statement. There's nothing more I can say to you guys because of my NDA with the engineering corps themselves. So anyway, let's go to the ships and go to the ships and give you guys an overview of the ships. So okay, here's the sloop that I designed, and it used the chemical engine that I said a while ago. These are pretty effective actually. Okay, so going back here, we have on the Overlord SC. SC just stands for sniper craft. It's like this over here. It's like this guy, but instead we're using EAT-led snipers. So the EAT-led sniper is more precise and it's more timed. So unlike, you'll notice that when we fire, the guns, actually, they look like a bunch of laser beams shooting out, but these are actually rounds that are being fired every millisecond. So it looks like the tracers make it look like it's a laser beam, even though it's a bunch of coil gun projectiles or railgun projectiles with tracers on them. So here, this time, we tried to give it a little bit of delay so that it's not too overkill. We want this guy to snipe out the good things efficiently and not accidentally hit any compartment, like crew compartments. Let's say we want to capture or board a ship. Let's say we want to board a ship without destroying and of course we don't want to destroy the ship's crew compartment. And the problem with the regular EAT-led series, not the sniper variant, is that because they keep going, or because they're firing very fast, it takes a while for them to actually stop firing. So once the rounds leave the vehicle, they're traveling at the same speed and they keep going, right? They don't suddenly just stop, right? And since these guys keep going and they're in groups here, they're endless, and once the weapon gets destroyed, it breaks through the armor. And because it keeps going, it keeps breaking through the armor continually, and it might destroy anything we don't want it to destroy. So the sniper series here is really meant for disarmament type situations where we want to disarm a ship and board it. Okay, now next is our small variant. Now notice how what I want you guys to notice is that even though these guys are relatively light, look at the mass. This is only 2.77 kilotons compared to other ships like the gunship, which is 11 kilotons. You'll notice that these guys have an absurd amount of delta V. Now delta V is, if you don't know it yet, delta V is just how much of our velocity we can change. So if we're starting with zero velocity, 0 kilometers per second of velocity, if we're at rest and we have a rocket engine or a small rocket on us, or fireworks that has a delta V of, let's say, 100 meters per second, that means we can only accelerate to up to 100 meters per second in any direction that we want, so up, down, or whatever. Yeah, so now you'll notice that this has 1.2 megameters per second worth of delta V. Yeah, and that's partly due to the very efficiency of the F-Force engine series here I put here. And you'll notice that because the thrust of these engines are so big, the acceleration is actually at 8.83 Gs. And our dry acceleration is 11.8 Gs, and our total burn time is 3 hours. We have a pretty good ISP on these engines, to be honest. And so our turnabout time, or the time it takes for it to turn or in any direction, is just 3.70 seconds, unlike other ships, which takes quite some time. Actually, this is gunskiffs, relatively small ships like gunships and gunskiffs actually take some time to turn. But you'll notice that this is 33 seconds, while our SC is 3 seconds, just 3 seconds, 3.2 seconds if we approximate it to two significant figures. So, right, yeah, same, just armor here. Same with this, the Overlord S. The armor is just sort of a precaution in case the enemy is able to actually give some fire on us. Now, as you see in the drone test, actually these ships use the same technology as the ships that you saw in the original Overlord, shortened video. You notice that when we did the drone test, these guys were able to snipe out the drones. Now, one problem that plagues a lot of our ships or conventional ships is that when an enemy launches a salvo of drones and the drones are able to kick off a couple of rounds from themselves, they're gonna hit our ships, and of course we're gonna maintain a lot of damage. But the good thing with the Overlord S and our 8 LED series of weapons is that they're able to snipe out the drones relatively quick before the drones are even able to fire. And you'll see that in the actual drone test a while ago, or in the video where we detail these guys. Now, same thing, same armor, and since it's smaller, actually, it has less delta V because it has less fuel tanks. If you'll notice here, if we go into the actual design of it, it only has one 100-ton methane tank and one armored 3-ton methane tank, and we have 2 crew modules to operate the ship. Actually, I could bump this down to 1, but I kind of wanted it to look aesthetically a bit fatter but shorter, but not really very thin to the point where it can easily be cut apart. Okay, so delta V is just 0.9, or this is 1, technically 1 if we approximate it to two significant figures. We get 1 megameters per second worth of delta V. And actually, when we're talking about prefixes of these guys, like K and then M, it sort of works like how we talk about technology, like storage space, like kilobytes, bytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes, something like that. So yeah. So after the S, of course, we're using 8 LED 2, second version. It has a narrow firing arc, and it's slow. It's pretty slow when it comes to rotating, but it's pretty much enough for us to decimate a decent sized fleet of gunships. Okay, so this is the original ship that we tested in the original video. This is which we modified into what we call our Overlord M ship. I think it's relatively the same amount of kilometers per second worth of delta V as the previous one, and our turbout time and our acceleration and stuff are relatively the same, except we just got rid of some of these ETLETs. And what's good about these guns is that they are relatively light. We can pack a lot of these onto one ship, and then they would have a negligible amount of effect on the delta V of the ship. Because a problem when it comes to designing weapons in conventional sense, without these technologies that we currently have, is that their weight, or the very weight of each turret or each gun itself, adds to the weight of the ship, and it's thus we get less and less delta V. Okay, and our ship gets heavier and harder to move and maneuver because our inertia increases, and we essentially need more firepower and stuff like that, and more tanks to actually move stuff around, or actually more tanks to hold propellant that we can burn to move stuff around. Okay, so now let's move on to our Overlord L. It's relatively the same thing, same specs as our Overlord video. And so we move on to our Overlord I, or Interceptor. Now the Interceptor here is not like the other ships, in not just conventionally speaking, but aesthetically speaking. These guys are intended to intercept various ships. And this time I don't understand why we kind of wanted to do this, but we did this thing here called this is a 1 pentawatt zero reactor. Okay, so aside the actual technology with the engines and the weapons, we need to have a power source. Now, even though our ships only require a negligible amount of power, we still need power anyway. So I equipped some of my ships with these 26 gigawatt zero reactors and these 1 pentawatt zero reactors. And we set the efficiency to 100% and heat to 0 watts, but we still need to get rid of 1 kilowatt of energy or heat. So that's why there's still radiators on our Overlord ships. So these guys are relatively light. This is 137 tons, and this is just 512 tons, or 512 gigabyte grams. So that's our Overlord interceptor. We use EAT-led snipers here, and now it's a good thing they're very small because relative to the hull of the ship, enemies are gonna have a very hard time trying to aim for it. Okay, so next let's talk about our Overlord H, or heavy rocket, or well, spacecraft. But instead, this time, part of it is equipped with EAT-led Generation 3 turrets or weapons. Now, compared to previous EAT-leds, EAT-led 3 is a sort of revolution in the design because we increased the base of the turret, and so thus we essentially do away with the problem of rotating the weapon. And so relatively same specs with the others when it comes to delta V and our acceleration, except our rollabout time and turnabout time are different. What's notable about the heavy series is that we have a rollabout time now, because we can roll the ship because we essentially have a ring of these engines over here. That's not, in fact, this is not the entire engine, it's a ring of them. So we have a bunch of these engines, with 20 in fact on each ship. And now Overlord H is just that, this one with EAT-led, but instead they're just equipped with EAT-led 1 generation 1 weapons. And the last in the Overlord series is the Overlord Skiff. Now this is just a regular laser skiff. If you'll notice, I'll bring up a laser skiff. This is just a laser skiff, but we we went away. We did away with the lasers and just equipped it with a EAT-led sniper, 2 EAT-led snipers, and this makes it very light. It's just 1.72 kilotons. It's just slightly heavier than the laser skiff itself, but you'll notice that they're roughly the same length. Yeah, because I maintain the sort of aesthetic and the tanks of it, and we also maintain the um, well the we also maintain the armor of it, but we just added a little bit more just to and spaced it a bit more so that it's just a little bit stronger. And you'll notice that we actually have less delta V here than our laser skiff. Now, a notable thing about the Overlord skiff is that this one here does not use the Overlord skiff does not use the Force engine series. It just uses a regular combustion engine, I believe, or nuclear engine, if I remember. It uses a nuclear engine, and it uses the same exact thermoelectric fission reactor that we used in the previous in that we used in a laser skiff. And you notice that the EAT-led snipers are over here on the side and not the front because they can easily be hit at the front. And I think that's it for the program. At the moment, this is just a small update on thing, and I believe this is going to be a filler video for next because I'm still thinking about speaking out of character here. I'm still thinking about what we're going to do next with that UC insurgency. Because I'm still thinking about what's the next front, or what's the next planet we're gonna battle in. Whether it's gonna be in the form of a campaign wherein we have to move from one planet to another, and it's hard to plan these things. And I'm still working with my partner, and all this, my world building partner. He's helping me out with these things, and he's actually the leader, or at least a representative of another faction. It's not really faction, it's more of a company, but still faction nonetheless. That assists the Consolidation of Spacers, which is my faction, of course. And we're still thinking about it. In fact, he's a bit surprised that we nuked Mars because we actually killed some of his citizens, and it's a bad thing that that happened. But it's sort of a good thing because it ended the UC and C.o.S war. And then because the war ended, and because they're aware that we are very overpowered and stuff like that, and that we're capable of actually nuking them to smithereens, they decided to retract from the war. We signed a peace treaty, and Shortly after signing the peace treaty, the UC officially dissolved because, of course, it were a bunch of greedy men that just bickered with each other about control. And so, after they stopped their unification or after they lost the war, everyone was desensitized and they just split off, I suppose. But now we have this rising insurgency that plans to sort of bring them back. So it's our goal to squash this insurgency. So until the next video, we're still going to be thinking about what we're going to do next in this campaign. So I guess that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next video wherein it probably won't be commentary type.